Matthew chapter 25. I'd like to begin reading tonight at verse 14. Before I read that, I already know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyways. So, do you want your journey to matter? Do you want your journey to matter? Let's read in Matthew 25:14. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them. And he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Verse 24. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So, take the talent from him, and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I'd like to talk about this parable this evening from two angles. Thank you, Jesus. I'm not sure why, but this reminds me of a story that I told Hannah this story the other night. There was a fella sitting in the park, and he was reading a book. And he was sitting there reading a book. There was a cell phone on the table in front of him. The cell phone rings, and it's a woman who says, she said, I'm glad I caught you. She said, I just found this great necklace on sale. She said, it's only $1,800. It's normally $2,900. She said, but I love it so much. He said, is it okay if I buy it? He said, sure, go for it. And she's very surprised. She's like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, absolutely. If you like it and you think it's worth it, don't hesitate. Take the plunge. She said, oh, thank you so much. And so, she hangs up the phone. He closes the phone, puts it down. He keeps reading. So he's sitting there reading, and then about an hour later, the phone rings again, and so it's her again. And she said, I'm glad I caught you again. She said, I was out, and she said, I found this, and just in the shop next door, she said, it's a mink coat. She said, I know that they're too expensive. And she said, but I've always wanted one. Dreamed about having one and thought it would just be fantastic. And there's this mink coat that's usually $4,800, and she said it's on sale for $3,200. Would you mind if I buy it? Well, do you like it? Oh, I love it. It's the nicest coat I've ever seen. Go for it. And she says, oh, are you serious? Do you really think it's okay for me to do it? And he says, absolutely. You only live once, just do it. And so she's so excited, she gets off the phone. And so another hour passes by. He puts the phone down. Another hour passes by, and she says, listen, she says, I'm at the car lot. And she said, I just found this really beautiful car for sale. She said, they have this BMW for sale. She said, it's usually $42,000. She said, it's on sale. She said, they're having like this blowout deal where they're trying to move the old models off the lot and for the New Year's models. And she said, it's on sale. She said, they're going to sell it for $33,000. And she said, I would just love it. She said, I need a new car. She said, this would last for many years. Do you think, she said, should I go for it? And he said, well, I asked her a couple questions. Did you talk to the salespeople? Yeah, do you think it's a good deal? Is the financing going to work out? Yeah. He said, well, go for it. He said, don't let the sticker price hold you back. She said, are you serious? She said, this is like such an amazing day. And he said, absolutely. He says, do it. And he said, if you really think it's a good deal and you think it's the right car, have at it. So she says, well, all right then. So she says, she gets off the phone, and he folds the phone, puts it down, picks up his book, reads a little bit more, puts his bookmark in his book, closes his book, stands up, stretches, and walks away, leaving the phone on the table. Well, he no sooner leaves and gets away from the park than here comes this man rushing into the park. And he has this worried look on his face, and he rushes over and he looks at the table. He rushes over and he says, you know what, he took it, my phone. And he puts his phone in his pocket and happily heads home. You can fill in the rest of the story. I think actually the first time I heard that, the guy had all the conversations, and after he got done, he closed it up, and he was actually in the locker room, and he came out of the shower, and the phone was ringing. He picked it up and he answered all those questions, closed it up, and he said, "Hey, whose phone is this?" Well, what's that got to do with this story? I'm not entirely sure, but it has something to do with money. And this story has a lot to do with money. Jesus told this story that, and I said we want to talk about it on two layers, on two levels. So I want to talk about it first of all in the sense of trying to understand what Jesus was saying in this parable, what his point really was. And then I also want to talk about it in the sense of just some thoughts and applications that the Lord has been showing me. I think it's important to try to talk about it, first of all, in the terms that Jesus really had in mind before we try to talk about some of the ways that the Lord has been applying it to me and some of the things He's been showing me. In chapter 25, verses 1 through 13, there's another parable, which we're not going to read right now. And that is the parable of what? Yeah, the 10 virgins. And in that parable, there's a wedding that's going to take place. There are 10 virgins. They're like bridesmaids. They're waiting for the bridegroom to come. So the wedding, the wedding's going to start, the wedding celebration. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting. They've got their little lamps there and the lights going on. Their little lamps are to kind of light the bridegroom's way as he comes in. And it's very cultural and traditional for them to do this. Well, he's delayed, and he's a long time coming, so they're getting sleepy as the night wears on. And so as they get sleepy, they're falling asleep, and some of them, 5 of them have oil, like reserve oil. 5 of them don't. And of course their lights were not battery operated. They had they're about the size of my hand. It's like a little round oval lamp with a little point on one end. And it had a little reservoir of oil on one side, and then a little wick that laid out across the pointed part. And that that wick would burn. And of course when the oil was empty, it would go out. So their lamps are going out as they're sleeping. And suddenly they cry, "The bridegroom is coming, and here he comes." Well, they jump up, and those who have reserve oil are able to refill their lamps, trim their wicks, and get their flame in order. 5 of them. 5 of them find out, well, we don't have any oil left. And because they don't have any oil left, they can't trim their lamps. They're out. So they can hardly be part of the little ceremony where they're, how would you feel if you were part of the ceremony and you had your little lamp, your little dark lamp with no light? It's not going to work. And they're like to the others, "Hey, can we have some oil?" And they say, "Look, we only got enough for ourselves. You're going to have to go try to buy some somewhere late at night." So they run off to try to buy some. Well, because of that, the bridegroom shows up. The ones that have lighted lamps, they all go in to have the wedding party. Finally, the other ones get back, and they're beating on the door like, "Let us in, let us in." And they're like, "Too late. The party started, door locked. Come back some other time." So they missed the whole thing because they were not prepared. Now that parable, and it's worth the time to talk about this because it fits with the next parable that we read. That parable has been reinterpreted in so many ways. And there's so many ways in which people have tried to make those lamps symbolize something. We try to make the oil in the lamps symbolize the Holy Spirit and all kinds of things. That's not really what Jesus was talking about. He wasn't talking about a Holy Spirit lamps. The whole scene is a scene that they could connect with very much because this was customary in their society to do this kind of thing. So the point of this story is, don't allow your preparedness to switch off, so to speak. Make sure that you continue to be prepared even if the bridegroom is a long time in coming. That's the point. And you see that point in verse 12. But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." I'm sorry, verse 13. "Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." So the point was, watch. Don't allow your preparedness for the return of the King to be switched off so that you are caught unprepared when he comes. Now, the next parable that we read, and I should say about the parable, with the oil and everything. Like I said, no, I don't think Jesus meant the oil to symbolize the Holy Spirit or the lamps to symbolize whatever. It's all about preparedness. Having said that, there's things we can say about, we need to keep our relationship with the Lord intact and so forth and all of that. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Or as we sometimes used to sing, give me gas in my Ford. Did you ever hear it that way? Give me gas in my Ford, keep me trucking for the Lord. You ever heard that? Okay. All right. That's the redneck version, that's all. The next parable is much like that in that it is once again about the importance of being prepared for the return of the King. Only this time it's pictured in a different way. It's pictured as a man who's going on a journey, and he calls to him his servants. He has 3 servants here, at least three primary servants. And it says he entrusts to them his property. Now, when we think about this, you know, how many talents did he give the first guy? 5, and the next one was 2, and the next one was 1. Now, you know, we might picture, well, you know, what, 5 coins? How much was a talent? I love the fact here, I appreciate this in my Bible, there's a little marginal note. It says a talent was a monetary unit worth about 20 years' wages for a laborer. 20 years! 1 talent. So, you know, depending on what you think a year's wages is, or, you know, I mean, that could vary widely. But let's just, I mean, we're talking about 1 talent would be the equivalent to us of at least hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even $1 million, depending on what person made. But certainly at least hundreds of thousands, because 20 years of work. So when he gives this man 5 talents, it says he entrusts to them his property, he's not just saying, hey guys, here's a few coins, you know, go out and have fun. He's saying, all my property, I'm giving it over into your hands. So for convenience sake, you know, maybe we could think about it as being, you know, $5 million, $2 million, and $1 million. Maybe that might be overblowing the values a little bit, but you get the idea. So he gives to them each these different amounts. Notice it says here in verse 15, he gives 5, 2, and 1. To each of them, what's his guiding principle as far as how much he gives to each of them? Exactly. He says, to each according to his ability. Now, that's really significant. First of all, by the way, the word talent, you know, in English, what does the word talent mean? Right. You know, we say, oh, well, that person really has a musical talent. That person has an artistic talent, or a carpentry talent, or a management talent, or a sales talent. That word, the way we use the word talent in English, well, guess where that came from? It came from this parable. That's why we use the word talent in English the way we do. It grows out of the use of the word talent in this parable. So our language, our English language actually was shaped at that point by a biblical story. But in the story, the word talent doesn't mean ability. It means a unit of money. But he gives to each according to his ability. So if you want to look up the thing about the talent, feel free to. So that's my best understanding of how we got the word talent in English. So we want to continue to talk about what's Jesus saying in this parable, but let me kind of step out of that for a moment and just talk about something the Lord was kind of speaking to me about this whole ability thing. And this is that second layer that I want to talk to you about. So we'll kind of go back and forth as needed. Have you ever looked at someone else and thought, it feels like they have 5 talents, and I don't feel like I have as many? Did you ever feel like maybe there's other people in the church or in the kingdom of God that you feel like they have been given more talents to operate with than you have? And talents could be a lot of things here. It could be talents the way that we talk about talents, or it could be talents in the sense of maybe opportunities to minister, or maybe a platform for ministry. You know, you see someone who's, I think of some people that are well known who are preaching like, preach to stadiums full of people. Did you ever have any thought like you feel like there's someone who maybe has been put in a different place than you and given the opportunity to do things that just seem kind of beyond the scope of anything you're ever going to maybe do as far as the size and scale of it? And the Lord was ministering to me about this, that it is very, very important for us not to envy those who we perceive as having been given a greater number of talents than we have been given. He gave 2 to the one guy, 1 to another, 5 to another. Maybe I'm the guy with 2 or the guy with 1. But whoever I am, it's very important that I do not envy the person that I perceive as having been given more. And here's why. Because He has given to us according to our ability. And when I envy someone who's been given more, what I'm saying is, I wish that I had the opportunity that they have. I wish I had the open doors that they have, the platform that they have. And here's the deal. If I were to be given that suddenly, there's a reason I haven't been given it. If I were to be given that suddenly, if I don't have the capacity, the ability to handle those, let's just say I'm the guy with the 2 and I'm wanting the 5. If I've been given the 5 and I don't have the capacity to handle the 5, guess what that does? I will only incur guilt because I won't handle the 5 the way that I should. And so God is not giving me the 5 when He knows I'm only able to handle the 2, because He's trying to give me something and put something in my life that will that I can successfully manage and grow through, rather than something that's going to cause me to fail by default because I don't have the ability. Because if I fail with it, I will only incur guilt. Because ultimately He's going to have to say, what did you do with what I gave you? So it's very important that we don't envy that which another person has been given. Instead, we need to recognize that there is a way for our capacity to be increased. But it's not by just envying it. So let's go on here. Okay, so to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once, and what did he do? Put it to the exchangers. That sounds like King James language. That's one, it can be translated that way. Anybody else have another? I'm sorry? Traded it? Put it to work? Yeah. So he took that, and I love this, and they're all bright translations. ESV says, and traded with them. He traded with them. How do you trade with stuff? How do you do that? Now, imagine, did you ever see those pictures of the New York Stock Exchange? I've never been on the stock exchange floor, but what are they all doing out there? Oh, it's just chaos, isn't it? I think, how does anybody know what's going on out there? Because they're all they're all doing this and that, Some of they have these languages, these finger languages that they use. Like, now they use all computers and stuff now, but they still do this stuff where they're signaling each other, and it's just chaos. What are all these people consumed with? They're trading, aren't they? They're trading stocks, and they're trying to cut deals and make deals and do this, all for one reason. What is the one reason that's driving them? To make money, exactly. To profit. They are trading for increase. They're trading for increase, right? That's the drive. What is this guy doing? He's trading for increase. So he takes the 5 and he trades for increase. And he made 5 talents more. That's pretty good. He started with about 3 to 5 million. and he trades. He's out there, he's trading, he's working. He's saying, hey, I'm going to buy this off this guy because I think I can buy it off this guy. Then I can take half of it and sell it over here, and half of it and sell it over here, and I can do this with it, and I can do that with it, and then I'll get some of this, and I can get this from this guy, give it to this guy, give something from him to this person, over to this person, back to this person, back to the first guy, and I can earn something off of that. And maybe some of the deals that he cuts, he may even have suffered losses on some of the deals he cut. But he's trading for increase. And it says here that the guy with the 2 talents does the same thing. Now I want to come back to that whole idea of trading for increase here. But let's talk about the parable. It says, but he who had received the 1, what did the guy who got the 1 talent do? Yep. He goes out, digs a hole, and hides the money in there. Now, eventually, what happens? After, it says in verse 19, after a long time. See, the time frames are important. Remember how in the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, remember the bridegroom was delayed for a long time? See, it's a long time. And part of the point that Jesus is trying to make is that it's in that long time that's where many people make the mistake. In that long stretch of waiting, many people become distracted by something else and they fail to carry through with watching and waiting for him. After a long time, the master of those servants came. One day. The question that we got to figure out here in this thing is, why did the guy bury the money? Why did he bury the money? He didn't want to lose it. At least that's what he said, right? So he who received the 5 comes before the master. What? There's probably even more jokes down there in that somewhere, but I'm not quick-witted enough to pull them out fast, so I better let that alone. All right, so the guy with 5 comes before the master, and he says, I had 5, made 5 more. The master says, you did really well. Do you notice what he says? He says, you have been faithful with a little. Wow, a little? That's a lot of money. Even in their terms, that's a lot. But apparently this master that we're talking about here, he said, that seemed like a lot, but the truth is, for what I've really got cooking, that was actually a little. You've been faithful with a little. I'm going to put you in charge of quite a bit now. Now remember what I said, and he says the same thing to the guy with 2, remember? Remember what we said about there is a way to increase your capacity. But what is that way? Not by envy. But what was this master doing? If he could count millions as a little, then what's he really up to? He says to these guys, enter into the joy of your master. And there's something so big that I'm really up to here. He calls it the joy of he said, enter into the joy of your master. That what you were doing before was just preparation to get to that. So, the guy who got 5 talents, do you think that when he was given the 5 talents, the master apparently could have given him 10? Because he counted 5 as a little. Why didn't he give him 10 at the beginning? You say, well, the numbers are kind of arbitrary in a sense, but Let me put it this way. When he gave that guy 5, he gave it to him according to his ability, right? But by the time that servant got done, how many talents did that servant know how to handle? Did he know how to handle 10 at the beginning? But he did by the end, right? The guy that was given 2, how many did he know how to handle initially? 2. That's what because the master said, according to his ability. By the end, how many could he handle? 4. How did they increase their capacity? By trading for increase. And so as they're going along, what's happening is it's not just the money that's increasing. It's the capacity, it's the administrative capacity of the ones who are doing the trading. They are growing. And so the master, when he gets back, notice what he says about the money. He doesn't just say, wow, I'm glad I gave you 5, you're giving me 10 back. Oh, all right, I'm going to put that in the bank. He says, you were faithful with little. Now I'm going to make you ruler over much. What he was really interested in the whole time was not just the increase of the funds. What he was interested in was the transformation and the growth of the 3 servants so that they would increase in capacity to be able to handle what he really had in mind. Now that starts to speak pretty powerfully to us. What is God up to in our lives? He is not just interested in what we do for him. He is interested in increasing our capacity. You see, as we are learning how to handle the ministry, the opportunity, the things that he gives us in our lives, all of those things, as we're learning how to handle those things with the right mindset, as we are learning how to use what's put in our hand to trade, to use it for the increase of God's purpose and kingdom, what's happening? It's changing us. We are being prepared and we are being fitted for what he really has in mind. Now listen, some of us are given one, and this is where I'm jumping out of the parable strictly speaking and just want to share with you something like the Lord was showing me about this. I'll call it a layer of application to us. Because I was thinking, well, Lord, you know, how can I understand this concept of the 1 talent, 2 talents, 5 talents? And I thought, I'm just going to think of them, it's way more than just a single coin, right? But I'm going to think of it that way for ease, make it easy to think about. So you got 1 coin, 2 coins, 5 coins. I'm like, Lord, what's the 1 coin? And it struck me, they all had at least 1 coin, didn't they? And it's as though the Lord was just kind of helping me to understand. We all have at least 1 coin. Our 1 coin is where God has put us. You know, each of us has our own life, our own work, our family, our friends, a circle of people that we interact with, right? You know, people at our church, people at our place of business, people in our home, the person at the store, the lady in the diner. We all have a circle of influence. We all have a life that we've been given. We're all here. We're all breathing. We're all doing things. We're all given a coin. But see, the question is, what's our mentality about this that's been given to us? Sometimes God gives us 2 coins, not 2 lives, but he gives us not only our normal sphere of influence, sometimes he'll give us an extra layer of influence. He'll give us a level of opportunity that's not necessarily given to everyone. It could come in a lot of different ways. Maybe we have a Sunday school class to teach. You know, maybe we have a pulpit that we preach at. Maybe we have a boys group or girls group that we're part of. Maybe we have maybe we have opportunity to go on short-term mission trips, or who knows what it might be. There's just like an extra dimension though that's gifted to us that we have the opportunity to do something. Maybe we go into the drug and alcohol rehab, and speak to people. Sometimes people are given 5 coins. They might be given an international platform. They might speak to large stadiums of people. But listen, what's important is not the number of coins that's been given to us. And I can sit here and think with my 1 coin, well, wouldn't it be nice if I had 5? No, don't do that. Because when you envy the 5, remember, you're thinking, wow, if I just had that. No, if you had that, you'd have 4 you didn't know what to do with, and you'd only incur guilt because you wouldn't handle them properly. But God does want to increase your capacity. So what's important is not how many coins you have. What's important is that you are trading for increase with the one that's in your hand. And as you are trading for increase, as you are thinking about your life and your opportunities as the opportunity for God to use that to increase the scope of His kingdom, what's happening to you? It's changing you. You are increasing. You are gaining in capacity, and that's what's really important. Because He has something in mind that's beyond the level that all of us are at right now. Let's talk about this other guy here. I know I'm going a little bit long, but bear with me here. We had the guy with 5, the guy with 2. Verse 24, he also had received the 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. To catch what's going on here, we got to keep this idea, the master was gone a long time. Now, the guy buried his talent, buried this money. And then one day the master shows up after a long time. Have you ever left home, or when you were a kid maybe, your parents left home and they're like, well, we think you're old enough now to be home for a while by yourself. So we're going to leave. And then they leave and you're like, you know what I mean? You're like, wow, I'm going to turn the TV on, I'm going to turn the radio on really loud. And, you're doing all kinds of stuff. And you think, wow, your mom and dad are going to be home for probably 3 hours. And then it's like 1 3/4 hours, and all of a sudden, they're coming in the door. And you're like, I made a mess in the kitchen, or I got stuff laying all over the floor, or, I got the radio blasted really loud, and they're like, all of a sudden, that moment of, they're home. Well, the master was gone a long time. So let me ask you a question. This guy's a servant, right? Bond servant. Basically, like a slave, but more than what we might think of as, a little higher than we might think of a slave being. But the master's gone. What do you think that the bondservant is doing? If he has buried the master's money that was given to him, what's he doing? Exactly. The guy that got 5, he went out and started to trade for increase. The guy that got 2, he went out and started to trade for increase. The guy that got 1, he said, you're leaving? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got it. See ya. Have a good trip. And as soon as he's gone, give me a shovel. Well, now that's buried. I know right where that's at. And now the master's gone. The money's in the ground. And I'm going to do my own thing. Well, they say, when the cat's away, the mice will play. He's free to do his own thing now. He does not have to concern himself in the least about the master or his agenda. Until one day when the master suddenly, he doesn't text first and say, I'm on the way. You know, there's no cell phones. He just shows up one day. Can you imagine the feelings like, now what? What am I going to do? What am I going to tell him? Well, what am I going to tell him? I know. Listen now how he spins this when he comes in. Master, he says, I knew that you're a hard man. I knew that you reap in fields where you didn't even plant. Now see, this is actually the servant saying, you're quite the operator. You know, in his own way, he's trying to compliment him. But you hear what he's really saying about the master? He's basically saying, to use some of our language, he's basically saying, I know that you're a pretty hard-nosed shyster. I know that you know how to jerk money out of people when it's not even necessarily really coming to you. I mean, that'd be an unkind way of saying it, but that's basically what he's saying. I knew you're a hard driving man. He said, so I tell you, I did the responsible thing. I took your money and put it in a hole. Now, notice what the master says back to him. He says, verse 26, but the master answered him. He's right about one thing. This guy, he's been around the block. He can cut right through the nonsense, and he knows what the real situation is. What's the first thing he says to this servant? That's right. He says, you wicked and lazy servant. Whoa. All that buttering up type of thing that the servant was trying was wasted. This guy, he instantly knows exactly what happened. He said, no, I know the real story. He said, you're wicked and lazy. And when I was gone, you were goofing off. And then look what he says. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed? That's a question. He's saying, is that so? That's what you knew about me, eh? He says, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. He's saying, if you actually thought what you're claiming, if you really thought that's the way I was, and I was that kind of a guy, then he said, you would have at the very least taken that money and put it out with the bankers where it could earn a little bit. But that's not what the guy did. He just buried it. And so he's basically taking the guy's excuse and he's just destroying it. He's saying, no, it wasn't any of that. You were just lazy. You had your own agenda. You wanted to go do your own thing, and that's what you did. You threw behind your back my agenda and what I had asked you to be involved with. You went off on your own tangent, and now I'm back, and you're not ready to give an account. And you see that warning in that? That's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, don't allow yourself to be caught in that place. Don't, because Jesus is leaving, but he's saying, I will return. Don't allow yourself to fall into the place where you throw his agenda and his responsibility in your life behind your back and go do your own thing. Because suddenly he will return. And when he does, you don't want to be in the place where you're trying to make up ridiculous excuses. That he's going to cut right through and say, no, I know the real thing that's going on here. Don't allow that to be you, Jesus is saying. he goes on, and I'm going to finish up here. He says, take the talent from him, to whom that one talent, give it to the guy with 10. Because you see, the guy with 10, why does the guy with 10 get another one? You think, shouldn't the guy with at least 4 have gotten it, right? Because we want to balance everybody out. He gives it to the guy with 10 because he has the greatest capacity. He's the one that has the capacity to handle another one. Jesus says, the one that has gets more. The one that doesn't have loses even what he has. That's the principle in the gospel, is that as you continue with the Lord and you trade for increase, as you allow him to grow you and expand you, you become able to receive more. But when you throw away what's been given to you, you lose the capability to handle even the little bit that was offered to you in the beginning. And he finds himself, that servant, thrown out into outer darkness. And the final point is the same again. Watch. Don't allow yourself to fall into this. So the primary thrust is to watch, just like in the parable with the 10 virgins. But the second layer of this kind of this application side, is this whole thing about trading for increase. And God is into increase. Of the increase of his kingdom and of his government, there shall be no end. He's all about increase. He's all about growing things. But he's not concerned in the way we are. What God's concerned about is he's concerned about increasing our capacity to be able to receive what he wants to give to us. And I want to ask you, I just want to encourage you with this tonight, that everything in your life, and this is what really hit me about all this, you know, we've all been given the one talent. You have it. You don't, it's there. You possess it right now. It's in your hand. You have your life. You have your job. You have your family. You have your opportunities. You have where you are at. What are we going to do with the one? Are we going to bury it? Are we going to look at it and think, I'm not sure what to do with it? Maybe it's not enough. If I only had 2 or 3 more, Lord, then maybe I could do something. Or are we going to trade for increase? Are we going to take that and say, this that's in my hand is what's given to me and gives me my opportunity to use this in a way that somehow brings increase in the kingdom of God. And that increase in the kingdom doesn't have to be bunches of people getting saved. It can be that listen, you know, when you sit down to have a conversation with someone, when you interact with people at work, what are we doing? How do we think about it? This is our coin. This is the one that's been put in our hand. This is our life. This is your shot. You don't get another shot. This time we have, it's our moment on the stage. It's not going to come again. And instead of looking at where we're at and the coin that's been given to us, the opportunity that's in our hand, instead of looking at it and just saying, God, wouldn't it be great if I had somebody else's 5? Let me say, God, thank you for the one that's in my hand. God, how can I trade with this thing? How can I use what's in my hand to bring about increase, to bring about a different thought in someone's mind, to cast an influence in someone's life that just might help them to move a little bit faster towards your kingdom, towards your will in their life? To somehow bring honor to the name of Jesus. God, this is the one that's in my hand, and I'm going to trade with it for increase. And as we take on that responsibility and we walk in that, our capacity begins to increase, and we're fitted and prepared in a greater way for what He has in mind. Amen. Jesus.